Yo, good.
Welcome to No Fugazi Podcast. State your name and where you're from.
Davion, I'm from Florida.
Florida, okay. And what are you here to debate about?
So I noticed that your title mentioned woke leftism, and you seem to have a very high idea of conservatism, and it made me curious. And I'm not a leftist or anything like that.
Cool.
I look at intersexual dynamics from a practical perspective. So I would just like to start by asking, do you believe that for men, modern conservatism is more practical than liberalism in this deregulated sexual marketplace?
Yeah, what do you mean by modern day conservatism? What's your definition?
Well, I think modern day conservatism is essentially just liberalism with a nostalgic aesthetic, because I believe that fundamentally what conservatism is male leverage, a male leverage based intersexual dynamic. And if you look at how things are nowadays, you know, marriage in 1969 we introduced no fault divorces, and that allowed women to just leave the union or whatever. And you know um damn, I'm freezing up. Hold up.
You good, Ben? You fine? Take your time, brother.
So, I'm saying, do you think that modern day conservatism is more practical for men than liberalism?
Liberalism. And currently, you just said that liberalism and modern day conservatism, in your definitions, are basically the same, right?
Yeah, but
Cool.
conceptually, it's seen as a different thing, but I don't believe it actually is. So,
Okay, you don't believe that it. Okay, you don't believe that it is. I mean, I can say that in regards to your definition of modern day conservatism, um, it's basically appealing to a practices that is liberalism. Do I have that correct?
yeah. Can
Okay,
I point
and
out? I,
you could go ahead and extrapolate that. I'll go ahead.
So yeah, even outside of marriage being different, marriage being fundamentally different, communal shame, that's another core aspect of real conservatism. What made conservatism back in the day, there was a high standard on female modesty, and that standard isn't in place anymore. We had the sexual revolution, which made it okay for females to go out and do whatever they want to, and it's very different. Conservatism, um, a lot of the leverage that was behind real conservatism is gone with feminism. So yeah,
Yeah. I would say that I understand what you're saying now. I would say that yeah, currently right now, modern day conservatism, you still have a lot of people that claim that they're conservative, but their actions don't fully align with the claims that they're making of what traditional conservatism
yeah,
is, right? They are, okay with women having OnlyFans, no pushback with women voting, no pushback with the current laws that backs up marriage and incentivizes the woman to divorce a man in a marriage and stuff like that. So yeah, there's not any action or any pushback on the modern day conservatism. So yeah, I get what you're saying. So I mean, yeah, I would say that in that instance, on the similarities of modern day conservatism and liberalism, it's similar from your definition. Yeah.
the though my point on modern conservatism, right, is how you just said we don't have any institutions in place to support conservatism.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I how I see it is it's sort of like a trap for most men, because it doesn't offer any real tools to enforce its values. It doesn't offer institutionalized leverage. It expects men to take full responsibility, be the providers, commit long term, lead the household, be modest, but it gives them zero authority or security in return. Females can just leave and destroy the conservative structure, whereas in the past it wasn't that easy, and that's why it was an appealing structure.
Agreed. Yeah, there's an obligation on men, but there's not an obligation on women. The obligation on men is to be protectors and providers in a relationship, which even the most feminine women, the most feminist women still want a man to protect and provide to a degree, even if they lie on a podcast and say, no, I want 50-50. That's just a lie. And then not only just in the relationship though, but I agree with your stance on that. But even before I get even to that further and break things down on, there's an obligation for a man and not an obligation for a woman, because I could break that down easy. Is there like a specific question or a topic that you wanted to debate about? Because I'm trying to make things concise for debate night instead of us just going on monologues.
Well, I was just listening to your video. I saw the title. The title talked about woke leftism. That
Okay, got you.
was the point
So
that
you just wanted to see where I stand.
yeah, that was part of it.
Okay.
And yeah, just some of the things that I heard from the video, it gave me, I had this assumption that you believed in modern conservatism. Though, you,
And what would give you that assumption?
um,
From your definition of modern conservatism?
It was something exactly that you said. I'm trying to remember. Yeah,
Well, while you're remembering that, I'll just go over the obligation. So once again, men have an obligation to protect and provide. And not only that, our obligation is not just to protect and provide in a relationship, but it's to protect the country. Like there's a draft selective service that we have to appeal to in order to vote, to get a license and stuff like that. And women do not have to appeal and sign up for a selective service at all. So they have no obligation to protect the country. They also don't have an obligation to even bear the next generation. They can go ahead and abort their children. They can take Plan Bs. We have all of these contraceptives for women so they can escape their obligations. And I would say that one of the woman's obligation that is opposite from the man would be being a wife and bearing children. And they don't barely even want to do that. They abort over 1 million abortions per year. So yeah, they don't adhere to their duty at all because they're not obligated. And we have a system that does not put any obligations on the woman. They put all the obligations on the man. This is why there's a lot of simps out here too. Simp culture is crazy right now. And simp culture, these men actually think that it's normal. Like, well, yeah, I'll go ahead and pay for the bills and take care of a woman and I'll go ahead and do these things. Do you expect her to have any role? No, she doesn't have to have any role. I don't believe in gender roles, but I believe that I should have a role. So these don't believe in gender roles, but they're going to adhere to their role, but wouldn't expect the woman to adhere to their feminine role. So it's nonsensical, but go ahead.
but I think a large part of that comes down to human nature. Like, have you ever heard about Briffle's Law?
Yeah.
So pretty much is the idea that, in the animal kingdom and structures where females bear the greater reproductive burden, they set the mating selection on the men, not vice versa. Unless we're talking about a vast minority of the animal kingdom, like fishes, insects, and stuff like that, majority of the animal kingdom, especially mammals, follow a rule where females put the reproductive selection on men, not vice versa. So a large part of it is that male standards, they don't actually exist. It's just a social construct. And this can be proven that it's a social construct. Because before recent years, like if we look way further back in time, like 4,000 to 8,000 years ago, the reproductive rate was like around one male reproduced for every 17 females who reproduced. Before that, 10 to 4,000 BC or something like that, it was 5 to 10 females for every one male. Females, they haven't really aligned with this conservative or traditional system until institutions were put into place that forced it on them.
Okay, I get what you're saying. So you're saying that it's natural. It's a natural occurrence. This is something that would have happened anyway because it's rooted in nature. That's what you're saying. And since it's rooted in nature, we needed some systems to go ahead and put it in place. This is why male standards are a social construct.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what you believe. So I would disagree with that.
What part?
And here's the disagreement. So when we say that male standards are a social construct, well, that isn't true, because if you leave things to nature, the woman wouldn't have a choice in reproduction because the man is physically stronger, right? He's physically stronger, so he can take from the woman. The only thing that can stop the man from taking from the woman is another man.
Yeah.
So if we put it down to nature, it would be men's standards would be whatever they want it to be if we bring it down to nature. But when we had things more organized and socialized and stuff like that, then we have men protecting women from other men and men protecting men from the bad guys, from other men as well. So it can seem like it's a social construct when it comes to men having standards. I would say that if we strip it down to its pure form and you were on an island and a woman was on an island, she would have to adhere to your standard.
Yeah.
So that's not a social construct, meaning that the man standards aren't a social construct. The man is the standard. Make sense? So that's the thing. The thing is, this is a a skill of, I always, if you watch my podcast, it's some game you can pick up. It's a skill when anytime you're thinking about things, and because you're a logical man, and I see that how old are you?
19.
19, you're young, man. So here's some games to you, man, because it's not a debate. But here's a skill that I learned, and I didn't learn it when I was 19. I learned it when I was like 26. But manipulation happens when you focus on the effects instead of getting to the root, the cause of things, right? So you can think sometimes that, this is a social construct, or, this is that, and that is this. But when you really keep peeling back the layers and get to the root of things, no, the male standard is the only standard. The only way a female can have any standard is if another man protected that woman so she can have a standard.
Yeah.
You get it? So this is the only way a female can have a standard is from another man anyway. Even if that other man would say agrees with that standard, whatever, she would still need that man to enforce her standard because they're not strong enough to enforce it themselves.
So would you say that, I can't say grape was
grape? Yep.
In early human history?
You cut out. Say that one more time. Grape was what?
Like a normal paradigm. Like it was the rule in early human history.
Well, before we were civilized is not to say that men aren't compassionate. I actually truly think that men are more compassionate than women, because I'm sure there were civilizations where grape was like natural. It wasn't even considered grape. It was considered like, oh, you're alone with a man? I don't have any choice. Like the way we think about it is like, will be much different the way they thought about it 4,000 years ago. The chick is around a man. She's like, well, this is going to happen. I'm going to be pregnant by this man. I don't have any choice. So
an analogy, like where I'd have control, like let's say I was on an island with just me and a female, but in human history, we were tribalistic creatures because we aren't strong enough, face the forces of the wild individually. So we typically found ourselves in a tribe of a multitude of men and females. So,
the strongest men set the standard.
Well, I mean, it's
always going to be like that. So even if it's a tribe of stuff, right? Let's just say men, because we're speaking about gender right now, right? Mm-hmm. So your claim was the male standard is a social construct.
Yeah.
My claim to refute your claim is, no, the man's standard is the only standard. Meaning that the man, to have a standard and someone to adhere to the standard, it needs to be enforced. Women can't enforce their own standard, so they have to appeal to a man. But men can independently enforce their standard. So even if you have a community and there's an island, like you said, the example I gave, but it's a community, it's a lot of men and it's a lot of women, then the standard would just be upheld by the strongest men.
Yeah, I mean,
you get it. Does that make sense?
But yeah, would you suggest that standard is great? That would be.
Would I say that? No, I don't think that is morally good.
Like, we can look into early.
Yeah, I don't think we're speaking about how things like we're not speaking about how things should be. It's more like how things are natural in nature.
I'm just curious if that's actually how things are.
Okay, well, let's expound on your point. Then ask another question if you're curious.
Ask another question.
But because you said you're curious on, I guess my example didn't sway you. So ask another question, and maybe I can help out.
Another question.
Yeah.
Spot.
In regards to that, do you have another or a point of contention in what I said?
I'm just a little puzzled on because you made a claim or whatever, essentially that in these times that the leading male or whatever the alpha male, he set the standards on reproduction and
just men, period. It isn't about the alpha, it's men. So a collective of men sets the standards.
Yeah.
If you even look at slavery, like black people being enslaved, if you look at anything, it appeals to men setting the standard and the strongest males, Nothing to do with women. Women don't set a standard on anything. Now, what they can do is they can influence creates thinking, thinking creates behavior. So how it is today, we can say women they use a power of influence to influence a male with their ideologies and ideals and stuff like that. They can influence a man. That happens. A man can be influenced by his mother and take on some more feminine ideas if he then influences some more men and they appeal to this ideology, then they can go ahead and enforce something that can appeal to the woman's benefit or way of thinking. That stuff like that happens. That's how the feminist movement came about. Like the feminist movement would not, in order for feminism to go on and to have any type of like say in a game, it had to be backed by men, meaning that men had to get on program with this type of way of thinking.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But that's how it is in everything though.
Conservatism would be brought back if, enough men banded together and they decided, we're going to end no fault divorces. We're going to bring back communal shame. We're going to add physical repercussions to, failed monogamy or whatever.
But it will have to be men that all share those conservative values.
Yeah. But
now the reason why feminism ran on so long is because there was men that shared feminist type of values and they enforced it. So the things that are enforced are always backed by men, never backed by women. Women can only influence a man to like take on some ideology to then enforce it, but women can't enforce it themselves. So feminism and stuff like that, and even the conversation that we're having about grape and stuff like this is like, or the man's standard being a social construct, that's just untrue. Like the man is the standard.
Well,
whether if he was influenced by a chick or influenced by another man, men enforce things. So males are the standard. Love your daddy, nigga. That's what, Jesus is your father, nigga. That's what it's like. Come on, males are the standard. Think about even religious texts and stuff like that. Everything was a patriarchy.
Yeah,
in the Abrahamic faiths.
Like underlying,
they would have had some chick out there doing things, but no. Even so, thousands of years ago, it still adhered to the man's standard, which is the patriarchy.
So I agree that the underlying thing that controls really everything is male enforcement. But a lot of the times we don't see male enforcement, and all we have to go off of is how society operates in its current iteration. Like that's speaking on the wood. I'm talking about like what anthropology actually shows, like what the social dynamics were of that society. It could have been different if males enforced it differently, but a lot of the times it wasn't. And pretty much what I'm saying is conservatism in the current state that it's in right now, where it doesn't have any male leverage and men aren't using their power of enforcement to, bring back real conservatism. Like, I'm not a liberal.
The betas are in charge, bro. That's why.
But I'm not a liberal.
I know. Like, think about this real quick. I know what you're saying. Let's get to the reason why. I agree with you on the whole modern day conservatism, your definition, and the liberalism, right? I agree that the modern day conservatism, kind of appeals to liberalism. The reason why, bro, think about Bill Gates. You're 19. Mm-hmm. So you were maybe too young. But I know when I was your age, Bill Gates was everything. He was like Superman. Elon Musk, freaked that nigga. Like Bill Gates was the guy. Now, once again, when I was 19, I was more liberal mind thinking and stuff like that. I was more, always had conservative values and stuff like that. But yeah, I was part of the left. You know what I mean? I was part of the black people that had the victim mindset and was like, oh, racism is priority. So I think that white people are racist, so I'm never going to vote conservative. I had that mindset. But when Same here. Okay, so when you have that mindset, there's figures like Bill Gates that push propaganda. Like he literally, I remember he would go on TV, it'd be commercials like the world is overpopulated and we need to do things to decrease the population. We need to have vaccines to decrease the population. It was all of these things about, and I always thought like, dang, the world is overpopulated. This nigga lied to the world, which then I believed it at a certain point too, before I was like, in my right logical mind to get out of it, right? So I say that to say, there's always gonna be some beta males like Bill Gates, men that take on the woman's way of thinking that has power to enforce things, right? So it's either gonna be, it's two ways, masculinity and femininity, right? You know what the masculine essence is. It's more conservative. You know where the feminine essence is. It's more liberal leaning and more leftist type, right? That's how it kind of is if we just sum it up. Now, men and women can take on both ideologies, either or ideologies. So they can lean a little bit more left or lean a little bit more right. But any ideals that's going to be enforced is based off of where males lie. So how many men are leaning in towards certain left-leaning liberal ideologies, then those laws and regulations and guidelines and stuff is going to be enforced.
Yeah.
If there's more men start leaning into conservative type ideologies and stuff, then those laws and guidelines and regulations are going to be enforced. That's all it is. But women themselves, they can only like complain. I don't like this. I don't like that. I ain't giving you no pussy tonight, nigga, if you don't do this. Like, they can only like complain. They can't enforce anything. So if you like that clip and you want to watch more, click right here. But if you want to watch the full episode, click right here.